In the mid-19th century, Jerusalem was a walled, medieval backwater. It was so dangerous that every evening at sunset, Ottoman guards physically shut the heavy city gates and locked them tight until morning. When the American author Mark Twain visited in the 1860s, he was appalled. He described it as a mournful, lifeless place, filled with rags, wretchedness, poverty, and dirt. To the rest of the world, this was a dilapidated outpost. But in 1869, engineers cut through the desert to open the Suez Canal. Almost overnight, the Middle East became the most valuable shipping corridor on Earth, the primary shortcut that dictated the flow of global trade to India. The empire controlling this vital real estate, the Ottomans, was rapidly decaying. They were widely known as the sick man of Europe. Watching their decline, rival empires like Britain, France, Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary began circling the territory, waiting to claim the pieces. The breaking point came after the Crimean War. The Ottomans survived, but only with heavy military help from Western powers. To repay that debt, the Sultan was forced to issue capitulations, legal loopholes that allowed European nations to establish physical footholds and consulates inside Jerusalem for the first time. Outright military invasion would trigger a massive global conflict. If these empires wanted to take over, they had to find another way. Instead of sending armies, they deployed architects, skilled medical doctors, and imperial postmen. They waged a proxy war using soft power. If you lived in Jerusalem at this time and wanted to receive money or letters from your family in Europe, you were entirely out of luck. The local Ottoman mail networks were practically non-existent, slow, and highly prone to theft. The Austrian Empire saw an opening. They bypassed the local authorities entirely and set up their own imperial post office right inside the city walls. They routed the mail through Trieste, put it on royal Austrian ships, and used armed escorts to deliver it straight to the local residents. Thousands of Jewish immigrants living in the city relied on donations from their home communities back in Europe to survive. The Austrian post office served as a direct financial lifeline, connecting these isolated residents to a foreign capital. The local population grew to revere the Austrian emperor, Franz Joseph, even giving him a warm local nickname. He successfully positioned himself as a protector to a minority group living thousands of miles outside his own borders. By delivering the mail and securing the local economy, Austria carved out a sphere of sovereign influence and created loyal subjects deep inside foreign Ottoman territory. While Austria focused on infrastructure, Britain targeted another severe vulnerability: sickness. In the mid-19th century, public healthcare in the city had effectively collapsed. Disease was rampant, and local clinics were largely non-existent. British Protestant missionaries arrived and quickly built modern hospitals, but they were driven by a theology called Christian Zionism. Their objective was to use modern medical care as a wedge to convert the local Jewish population to Christianity. This strategy created intense friction. In one infamous incident, an exhausted, impoverished Russian pilgrim sprained her ankle outside a British mission. She was taken inside for treatment, but her condition worsened, and she ultimately died in their care. Because she passed away inside a Protestant facility, local Orthodox rabbis refused to let her rest in a Christian burial plot. Under the cover of darkness, they marched to the cemetery and dug her up. The missionaries reburied her, and the rabbis dug her up again. To protect their community from what they saw as medical extortion, local Jewish leaders realized they had to compete. They scrambled to fund and build their own rival medical facilities, like the Bikur Cholam Hospital. Stethoscopes and hospital beds had become the new front lines of a territorial turf war. The third tactic was physical domination of the skyline. European nations ignored centuries of local Orthodox tradition and used the emerging science of biblical archaeology to stake their own historical claims in stone. The German Empire acquired a plot of land right next to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. There, they constructed the massive Lutheran Church of the Redeemer. To legitimize their presence, they specifically incorporated ancient Crusader arches into the new facade, branding themselves as the returning heirs to the Holy Land. When the church opened in 1898, Kaiser Wilhelm II arrived in person to dedicate it. The newly unified Germany was eager to project power, and the Kaiser treated the pilgrimage as a militaristic parade. He refused to dismount his horse to enter the old city. Instead, he forced the Ottomans to tear down a section of the ancient defensive wall and fill in the moat next to the Jaffa Gate, just so his royal carriage could roll straight through. To fracture a holy city's ancient walls and stamp a towering new steeple over its skyline was an undeniable message. Germany asserted its geopolitical dominance without declaring war. Fast forward to December 1917. The Ottoman Empire has finally collapsed under the weight of World War I, and the British seize control. General Edmund Allenby arrives to formally claim Jerusalem. Unlike the Kaiser 20 years earlier, Allenby understood the optics of power. He deliberately dismounted his horse, removed his hat, and walked through the Jaffa Gate on foot, using calculated humility to win over the watching crowds. The city Allenby walked into was unrecognizable from the desolate, locked fortress Mark Twain had mocked. It had burst beyond its ancient walls, fully modernized with bustling new neighborhoods, banks, and clock towers. The irony is that the empires who spent millions developing the city, the Ottomans, the Austro-Hungarians, the Russian Tsars, and the German Kaiser, would all be wiped from the map by the end of the war. The physical scars, neighborhood divisions, and grand monuments of their 19th century race remain. This competition to build, heal, and deliver the mail actually dictated the blueprint of the modern city.